institution, any for the survival of any institution. So we have seen how institutions have progressed because of good governance, how institutions have fallen because of bad governance. So this being such an important point, we thought that we should be devoting a lot of attention to this aspect. In fact, when the last financial year, when we had a lenders meeting in Bombay, two concerns which the lenders were expressing were that one is about the governance practices in microfinance sector. Number two is about the transparency. So these are the two areas which probably we thought we should be working on, and we should be helping the microfinance sector to overcome if there are any such deficiencies in them. And as a first step, we all know that we brought out a governance kind of a guide, a guide for the good governance practices, which was released last January, and it was appreciated by many of the, I mean, all the people, including Reserve Bank of India. As a follow-up of that, we thought that we should also have a webinar which will further strengthen the points which has been already laid down in that manual, and also make us make our governance practices much better. So that's the reason why we are here today. And today we have a excellent panel who will be discussing these aspects with us. And it's none other than Srinivasan Saab is there to guide the deliberations. We have a Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi from IOD, who would be giving the technical aspects and the details about the governance practices. We have Anil Gupta from Microsave, who would also be giving an overview about the governance practices in the sector. We have two practitioners, Mr. Sadaf Saeed from Muthoot Microfinance and Sri Arun Kumar Padmanabhan from Swasti. So I am sure today's discussion would definitely be useful to all of us, and will help us in strengthening the governance practices in each one of our institutions. As I said, we are also working on the transparency manual. We are also bringing out a transparency manual, and we are trying to see how that can also be improved upon. So with this, I will not take more time, because we have a limited time, and we have a good set of panelists. So I leave it back to Sri for taking forward. Thank you so much, and welcome each one of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to request Ms. Bhagyashree Surana to start with the presentation. She is a company secretary, and earlier she was working with IOD also. She has helped us to write the governance guide, which we have released in December. January. Bhagyashree, if you can start. I'll just put the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I'm CS Bhagyashree Surana, and I'm a company secretary by profession. And I was also a part of Sa-Dhan's governance manual, which came up in January 2023. Right. And it has released an overwhelming response, for which I feel elated for being part of such a good team. And when we talk about the whole idea, it came up after some recent incidents like NBSC's governance failures, which happened recently, and the sudden crisis situation which arose in the pandemic. Also, RBI's focus area has been recently shifted to the governance strengthening only. So that was the whole idea to come up with this manual. And in this governance manual, we talked about the learnings experiences which influence the directors in their decision making and strategy, and also help them to responsibly handle the legal situations. While interacting with various practitioners, we analyzed the current governance challenges in the MFI sector. It was felt that Sa-Dhan, being the largest association of MFIs in India, should bring out it as a guide which can act as a primer for MFI directors. So we hope this manual shall benefit all the players in the impact sector in building up a good corporate governance system, and also strengthening their existing systems which they have. The coverage of this manual is good governance practices, We talked about the challenges, legal framework, governance structure, emerging rules and trends, audit and controls, and also we talked about the solvency and transformation roadmap. So starting with the presentation, I'm hereby presenting a few practices to promote good governance and prioritize sustainability. Greenwashing. Greenwashing is a term used to describe a false, misleading, or untrue action or set of claims made by an organization about the positive impact that a company, product, or service has on the environment. Greenwashing has become increasingly relevant as more and more companies make false environmental claims to deceive customers. It can be linked with the good governance in a few ways, which I will explain now. Firstly, the good governance involves transparency and honesty in business practices, and greenwashing just goes against these principles. Secondly, good governance includes considering the interest of all stakeholders, whereas greenwashing can harm both the environment and society by promoting unsustainable practices. Also, good governance involves accountability and responsibility for actions. And greenwashing, on the other hand, it undermines the accountability by making it difficult for stakeholders to assess companies' true environmental impact. Companies, in order to promote good governance, shall consider implementing third-party certifications and independent audit to provide better assurance to the stakeholders. Now, greenwashing and green blushing are the two opposite phenomena which are related to companies' environmental performance and communication. As already discussed about the negative impacts of greenwashing, on the other hand, green blushing refers to the act of downplaying or under-communicating companies' environmental and sustainability performance. It can result in missed opportunities and it needs to be avoided. To avoid both these issues of greenwashing and green blushing, MFIs should focus on being transparent and honest about their sustainability performances, using clear and credible communication, and using third-party standards and certifications to provide independent verification of their sustainability initiatives and credentials. Now, there are currently no specific and widely recognized guidelines or frameworks for green blushing, as it is a relatively new concept which has just come up and emerged as a counterpoint for greenwashing. It has not yet been widely studied or addressed by industry groups and regulatory bodies. However, there are several best practices that MFIs can follow, and there are various guidelines and frameworks that MFIs can use to ensure their sustainability claims are accurate and credible, and to avoid the appearance of greenwashing and green blushing. These include, there are certain standards which includes Global Reporting Initiative GRI framework for sustainability reporting. ISO 14001 standard is there, and the Carbon Trust standard is there. The Federal Trade Commission's green guidelines can also help. Moving to the next slide. There is a detailed study published on how MFIs go green by taking social responsibility as a dominant factor in their growth strategies. So this is quite a detail on that study. Moving on to the next slide. So now come some key strategies to combat greenwashing and promote more sustainable practices are mentioned there. Now, COVID has in a big way impacted how business is being done. And with respect to finance function, it has speeded up to the digital financial transformation. Digital financial transformation, it is being defined as a holistic approach to financial management as it relies on the digital landscape and innovative technology. The emphasis is on leveraging the IT to support business strategy and for adopting to dynamic business conditions. Under this situation, it has now become part of an overall business strategy, which continuously seeks success rather than it being just a technology strategy. Also, there are four main aspects which comes under this, that is technology, data, process, and organizational realignment. When we talk about the trends in digital transformation, these are the challenges, and then we come to the trends of digital transformation. Next slide, please. Yes. The relevance of Internet of Things has increased. Wait a second. Slide number 9. Yeah. The relevance of Internet of Things has increased, and it refers to rapidly growing network of connected objects. I think this is slide 10. Slide number 9. Yeah. To start with the Internet of Things, as I was saying, the relevance of Internet of Things has increased, and it refers to rapidly growing network of connected objects or devices that are able to collect and exchange data using embedded sensors, software, and other technologies. Then customer data platforms. It refers to a software that seeks to create a unified customer data across a variety of touch points. In cloud network, as you all know, it seeks to closely integrate multiple cloud services and systems with a view to achieve synergy. It has a great potential to meet the emerging requirements of MFIs for cloud-sourced storage, networking, and digital security. Then technology behind contactless payments is e-wallet, which we all are using as of now, mobile wallet that enables user to make payments quickly, safely, and conveniently. Then the blockchain. It can be defined as a decentralized and distributed ledger that records transactions and is unalterable. Blockchain is very powerful in record management, accounting, and auditing potential. Next is the automation. It reduces the cost considerably and brings improved efficiency so that directors can spend more time on strategic tasks. Data science is a broad field of study pertaining to data systems. Big data is a collection of data that is huge in volume and growing at an exponential rate. Data analytics means analyzing raw data in order to make conclusions and generate reports. Then comes the artificial intelligence. It refers to building smart machines which are capable of performing tasks that typically requires human intelligence. Next slide. Here are some challenges which are posed out of digital transformation. The regulatory framework has to catch up regularly and fast to address the gaps in governance and compliance. Yeah, now it is important for us to understand how exactly we will be able to uphold good governance, which is in congruence with latest digital revolution. Slide 11, please. So now we are just understanding how digital transformation is going to help in good governance. So this is the way forward. Like we can do it by developing basic understanding of digital transformation, which is the first step ahead. Also, big data can be used to improve efficiency and encourage innovation, and new business models can emerge, which is important on the part of strategy of the directors. Then introduction of digital dashboards is imperative and can help directors to investigate KPIs, which means key performance indicators. So directors can use the digital dashboards for that purpose. With the advent of digitization, board of directors becomes the custodian of change. In addition to existing role, board and management is also responsible to create opportunities and hire functional specialists who are dealing regularly in the digital transformation thing. Board of directors shall delegate governance of risk to a risk management committee who can take care on a regular basis on the risk associated with digital transformation. Board shall also form a standards and ethics committee to consider developments, review the microfinance institution's adequacy and effectiveness, and its engagement with the stakeholders. Boards need to develop digital skills and not only depend on digitization experts. Board meetings must have executive sessions which can share updates on the new technologies that are coming up. And board must also encourage creating virtual networks of stakeholders and encourage participation and sharing of knowledge within the board. So in this way, we can just go ahead. Yeah, so now what are social audits and how it is important? It is a diagnostic tool that assesses whether or not an MFI has the systems in place to achieve its stated social objects. It also identifies strengths and weakness to prioritize the areas for improvement. Now we are mentioning about some usefulness of social audits for MFIs. So in this way, they can use social audit. Social audit would by and large bring improvements in governance practices and establish integrity and sense of community. MFIs could continuously strive to meet and exceed its social responsibility benchmarks and can improve its public perceptions. Social audit is also an assessment of how well the company is achieving its goal and benchmark for social responsibility. So this is the way ahead. Moving to a next slide. Donors and investors. Donors and investors use social audits. Slide 15, please. Yes. So donors and investors are using the social audits in this way to diagnose social performance and identify areas for improvement and also monitor the same. There is a very good example mentioned here of ICO credit. In this way, the ICO credit is a pioneering social impact investor and worldwide cooperative promoting sustainable development since 1975. It also worked with its partners to implement the industry tools to monitor KPIs. So now, when we talk about the statutory framework of social audit, next slide. Slide 16, yeah. When we talk about the statutory laws and framework relating to the social audit, it is like currently the Companies Act does not require companies to mandatorily conduct any social audit for the CSR activities, but monitoring of CSR activities and its reporting is mandatory as per the company's CSR rules 2014. Added to this, it is the responsibility of the company through its CSR committee to monitor the funds of the company which are to be utilized as per the policy of the company. Regulators have introduced e-form CSR2 through which companies are mandatorily required to file a detailed report in this form, which will be on the CSR activities undertaken by the company with its detailed information on the projects which they have undertaken and how they are spending on them. Further to this, companies are also required to conduct impact assessment of their project subject to certain norms and conditions. As on date, there is no mandatory requirement for social audit or CSR audit, yet the companies may voluntarily choose to have the social auditing as it is a good governance practice. Yeah, well, thank you everyone for your interest and attention. I sincerely appreciate and thanks to the team Sa-Dhan for giving me this opportunity to present to you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagishree, for bringing the use of technology for a good governance as well as the importance of social audit in good governance practices. So thank you so much. Now we will move into the actual discussions and we have a panel with us. So I will request Sri to introduce the panel.
For as of today's speaker, I would like to invite Mr. N. Srinivasan. Has 4 decades of development, finance, and economics experience. He had been a central banker and development banker for 30 years, and he's a very well-known name in our sector. Then Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi, he is a vice president of Institute of Directors and associated with UN international agencies. He has been thrust is on technology intervention and board and senior management, mainly for climate resilience and ESG. He is also an advisor to FAO and former chairman, Institute of Engineers, Delhi. Then I would like to invite Mr. Sadaf Saeed, Chief Executive Officer of Muthoot Microfinance. He has started off the business in 2010, and Mr. Shahid has led Muthoot Microfinance to become the 4th largest NBFCs in the country, managing more than 9,000 crore AUM, catering to 2.1 million rural households. Then I would like to invite Mr. Arun Padmanabhan, co-founder and CEO of Swasti Microfinance. He also handles the human resource function and is a lawyer and was with ICICI Bank till June 2007. Then I would like to invite Mr. Anil Gupta. He is a partner of Microsafe Consultancy and heads the digital financial services, payments, and distribution domain. He has a hands-on development banker and technology manager with over 2 decades of experience. I would now like to welcome our panelists and request Mr. Srinivasan to moderate the discussion.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Shri, and thank you, the other Shri, for bringing on board some of the, Bhagya Shri. There are 2 Shris there right in the beginning, for bringing on board some of the, issues that have become important in modern day governance. I merely make a very brief initial comment, and then I go over to this very widely and richly experienced panel seeking out views. Very loosely, someone was asking about what is good governance. This was asked of Dr. Henry Kissinger, the president's advisor in the US, quite some time back, before governance became a good subject. He said, you choose good people, invest in good processes, give them good quality information. Of course, ask them to decide on only those key issues which impact a wide variety of people in the area that it seeks. In a nutshell, I think it's a definition of what is good governance, which came later on in the Blue Ribbon Committee reports and all that. Meaning, how do you balance the interests of different sets of stakeholders as you run a business? And when you are doing that, how do you ensure that you are fair, transparent, hold the organization committed to its mission and its vision? So when we talk about stakeholders, we have an imagery of the investor being there and the staff being there and the vendors and the direct client being there. But in recent times, we have seen that there are some new constituencies that have emerged. One, the society at large is considered to be a stakeholder with the Amendment to Companies Act in the form of CSR regulation brought to fore, that you can't say that I have done a good job of what you are supposed to do, made profits for everyone, customers are happy. They say that, you have got to do something more. The second, because it goes beyond the normal customer base, the society at large. The other stakeholder which has come in is the environment itself, where we now talk about how much you are contributing or how much you are destroying. And can you come and report on what you do? Can you account for your actions in the sense how much of your actions actually limit damage or improve, or at least show that you are on the path to being fully aware of the kind of things that you do to the environment at large. So these are indirect stakeholders that have come. So the role of people in governance has increased to recognize these indirect stakeholders. But then what is the actual role of the directors on the board? Is it that you talk about things that are right? Or is it that you give voice to people who are not represented there to voice their interests, like say the customers, maybe some of the employees, or maybe the minority shareholders, especially in case of the company form of business. And when we talk about fair and transparent, what exactly we mean? What is that line that determines that you are adequately transparent and fully fair? Because transparency is a virtue with a limited context. They say truth is always good. Absolute truth may not be. So the art of governance is to choose what maximizes the good of the maximum number of people that we are dealing with. At the same time, not letting some of those who are not being impacted with the good, at least not being affected with the bad, not harmed in it, do no harm. Can some of the things, the existential issues before the directors are many. I won't go into them now. I would probably open it up for discussion, and then we come through because there is no structure here. We are talking about something that is good governance. Maybe I should invite Mr. Chaturvedi in his what do you call position as Vice President of Institute of Directors, who also conduct, I think, quite a number of programs for independent directors, especially. What are the top three challenges you think the modern day boards actually face in governance? Yeah, Mr. Chaturvedi, you are on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Srinivasan. It's a wonderful opportunity when I find our former colleague Bhageshri opening out and making the opening presentation. It's really wonderful to see her after quite some time. But it just shows that she has continuously been associated for the Sa-Dhan's work. When we were doing the programs earlier for Sa-Dhan, she was involved, and she is still associated. That gives us so you have got two people from the IOD family addressing you today. So because if she belonged to our family, she can't go off, right? So now, but then she has made a wonderful presentation and
definitely, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So to lay down the things. Now you asked me to speak on three major challenges that the board face, and I'll tell you the first and the foremost is that the board should know where do we have to go, what will be the situation be in future, and what should our future be. Are we going to plan for 15 years from now, for 10 years, for 7 years, or what it is to be? Now, most of the people who have seen these digital transformations and the COVID era, now they feel that the best course for us would be that we plan for 2030, when the whole world would be finalizing on the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, that is one point where everyone on the earth is converging onto, and the businesses have been taken up as the fourth arm, which is supposed to help the government, the international agencies, and all others to see that it is attained. Now, if businesses have to help and attain the Sustainable Development Goals, then for us, keeping 2030 as our target, we should develop our strategy, and that would be really carry most of the persons very effectively. Now, since we are dealing with many of the NBFCs who have been involved, there was a big discussion on what NBFCs can do and how NBFCs would be helped by the RBI and by other banks and all. But really speaking, when you just see, I mean, it's with them, you want NBFCs or the SMEs to grow, you have to do the handholding, and somewhere down the line, that handholding was really absolutely missing. Not that something went wrong, but what you found that NBFC started with a big bang, and everyone thought that these will come up, and many new things came up. One of the reasons the whole banking institution, after restructuring and demonetization, took a new shape, and with the COVID coming in, the digitalization really saw that all those who had the capacity to digitize fast, they could move faster. But saying that you can digitize is easy, but digitization itself is a costly affair. It's a capital expenditure required, and it's not only the capital expenditure required, but you also have its operational expense is also quite high. The moment you move on, especially the financial institutions move on to the digital platform, they find that the cyber security is a very important issue for them, and ensuring the cyber security of the level which is required for the financial institutions is a very big task. It's a very costly affair where you need to really upgrade virtually, you can say, every minute. That means you have to do it at a very fast pace. Now that was a second very important thing where many of the NBFCs really they thought that now digitization is a green area and we could move on. But then when they compared that, these two things did not meet. The third important thing was that government wanted MSMEs and NBFCs to really come forward and really do the Made in India program and make the country in a big, help and make the country in a big way. We started that we have decathlons, which are now coming up. But then suddenly it appeared that somewhere it as if it has burst like a bubble, and things did not move as fast or in the direction where you were trying to move. Now, some of the reasons are technological too. I'll say in the energy sector, everyone thought that the renewable source of energy, especially the solar, things will move fast. But since we had difference of opinion with China, the panels started coming at a lower pace. But then we thought that we can make it. Many companies came up, they've started manufacturing. But to look and behold, you'll find that they are not selling it in India because they found the international markets, because China also had differences with the West. And the West is not buying from China, but they want the solar panels and all. So all these things which were being manufactured for India, where the SMEs and the NBFCs would have played a very big and important role. These were really, the small companies became the larger companies, or they are bought over, like you see Reliance and Adani have bought over many of the manufacturing and assembly plants, and they have gone in, and they are just exporting 100%. I mean, we are not benefiting. Now, that was just one example. There could be many more examples where NBFCs could have really played an important role. But the things became, although we thought that things will become easier, but as the time passed, things became little more tough, and it became much more difficult with the laws changing, with the demand, with the environmental issues coming up in a big way. IOD has always been transforming its courses to see that we teach people on the transformative technologies, tell them how you do it. We also tell them about why ESG issues are important. Now, virtually, if we are into the international arena, and if you will not fulfill all the requirements of the ESG principles, no bank on the earth will give you even a single rupee. Now, that's a kind of a thing. Now, preparing for ESGs, preparing for digital transformation is not a small game, and we need big support. And I never hold my words. I think the government has to come and give us in a big way. So I think these are the three major issues. Yeah. Just to open out, then IOD has done many of these things. IOD would be happy to support Sa-Dhan or any other organization. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chaturvedi. I'll come back to you later with another round of a shorter question. And thank you for focusing on some pretty important aspects in terms of modern day challenges. Like, how long is your horizon as a board? Are you looking at next 100 years or 50 years, or is there something more finite, more concrete? And of course, digitization, the kind of opportunities, but also the challenges. And finally, the ability to cope with external environment, how much is the capacity with the boards and how much is the willingness also to deal with that? I would now move to Sada. Sada, your questions are more, nuanced. We are in a situation where, especially in microfinance, we want to open up the newspaper and find that there is no news about microfinance there, especially when the sector seems to do well and there is a good growth rate, there is a reasonable traction on recovery and all that. When things go south, there are different actors who are behind. The investors want, the lenders, the employees have certain ways of wanting to run the business at that point of time, and the customers maybe they have a very different, what do you call, ask altogether. This scenario has played out year after year in different parts and the geography after that. As a CEO who is managing all these, what do you call, different balls in the air, and what glues them all together is what we call the art of governance. How difficult or easy it is to manage? And what do you actually do to bind them all together and then look at a unified direction, bring some amount of peace into what we do as an institution? What kind of challenges that the CEO faces in getting governance going for the good of everyone?
Thank you, Srinivasan sir. I think very pertinent question. I think ESG from a prospect of like an institution, like a microfinance institution, or the governance aspect is even more important than like maybe governance for any institution which is not directly dealing with the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think this is the core of our business, basically, to be honest. And before I get into microfinance specific stuff, I just wanted to say a couple of things. So I think with governance becoming more and more center of a discussion and a focused item, I think it is important for everyone, all the stakeholders, to realize that the intention behind this is to look at the direct consequences of our business and the indirect consequences of our business. So direct being like you take care of your shareholders, you take care of your employees, you take care of your customers, you take care of your lenders and other stuff, and different businesses have different stakeholders. But at the same time, what is the impact of your activity indirectly? So what are your carbon footprint? How you are impacting in the social environment, what business you're doing? Are you sourcing some stuff which is not good for the environment and stuff like that? So I think that brings in the 360-degree overview of the environment where you are operating. So I think this is very, very relevant. Microfinance business has always been a kind of a social venture. So we have always worked towards the betterment of the poor and the socially excluded or deprived part of the community. But I think it is also important to look at what are the impacts we are making around us. So it's all very good to just lend to the kind of people and just concerned about what your bottom line is and not look at where the money is getting used. So if your money is today getting used for something which is not good for the environment, or you're sourcing some stuff for your operations which is not good for environment, your vendor is such that it is impacting environment, so it has its negative connotation. We have had examples in other industries. There are companies who are issuing green bonds and ultimately found out that those energy needs are being met by coal. So all of those things are very, very relevant. So I think for a financial institution, it has become doubly relevant because there is a whole lot of money that has been raised in Europe and in US on the name of ESG. On the environment, social, and governance aspects. And definitely that money needs to find some home in terms of where it's getting utilized. I think that is where the financial services organization play a role. And being a microfinance institution, we cover very direct kind of a social impact. And even in the global scheme of things, the SDGs, almost out of the 17 SDGs, directly or indirectly, we contribute to 17 SDGs. So that is very relevant role that microfinance plays. So as a CEO, I think governance, or for that matter, commitment to ESG, it just doesn't come from where the funds are going to come from or whether it's going to contribute better to your margin or economic of your operation, but it is a commitment from within. So like I would say Srinivasan sir has been watching this sector for a very long time. I think all of us got into the business and not only looking at that, okay, we will reach a scale or we will make some profits and stuff, but because we thought there is an underlying need and we need to meet that need. And there would be economical viable solutions to it. And that's what we had tried to achieve. So I think that is where the core of ESG and the governance aspect lies within. So unless or until we are committed that we would be transparent, we would be honest, we would be sincere, we would be taking care of all the stakeholders, this ESG aspect would be like a futile exercise just on a paper where we are ticking. So from a CEO point of view, when we talk about, when we commit ourselves that, okay, we will ensure that the gender bias in the operational hierarchy would be reduced. So we have set out commitments to ourselves to have equal number of male and female employees. We need to ensure that our carbon footprints are neutralized. We have put a timeline to it. And the way the ESG framework is designed, we have gone through that exercise. There are very, very tangible parameters which are going to be reported. So there are around 900 odd parameters. We have done an ESG reporting on around 180 parameters now. As a public company, you would have even more parameters. So those would be very tangibly reported. And it's a commitment from our side that we would be voluntarily disclosing what is our current position and what we want to achieve. So I think that is where ESG heart lies in, that you have to be committed to the cause and you have to ensure that you achieve those things. And it obviously governance has a cost attached to it. So when I say that, okay, I would not buy from a vendor who has no proper employment base and he's not giving the right kind of wages to the employee, and I'll take from a vendor who has proper kind of governance and he's not having, maybe a cost would be slightly higher, but I would have to ensure that I live up to those commitments. So I think there is a cost associated to it, but more important is that you are living the commitment. That is where I think it is. And you say correctly that when the times are good, there are news about how the business is growing, how the business is profitable, how the delinquencies are reducing, but we don't talk about the impact that we are making. And definitely that is where our focus is, not only the impact what we traditionally have been making in terms of financial inclusion, but now more so from a digital inclusion point of view. It is very important, and it's our duty to ensure that we take all our customer segment in the digital journey that the country is taking and digital transformation that is happening, and make them also aware of their impact of their business and their surroundings. So all of this is required under ESG governance framework. And as an CEO, as a practitioner, we are responsible for that. And we have committed, we have put timelines, we have put deadlines, and we have put measures that how we will ensure and we'll do that.
Thank you, Sadaf. Putting the G in the context of the ESG very nicely, and then looking at, yes, when in good times, everything is fine. You don't need to focus on what you communicate in bad times. What you communicated in good times should come to the rescue. So governance is an everyday issue, not only when at your choice, whenever, the good messaging. I'll now turn to Anil before I go to Arun Kumar. Anil, we are talking about technology. I think two aspects which have not got, I would say, adequate attention or adequate governance attention. Not because the board did not want to do, but because of the nature of the subject. These are one, risk. Second is technology. So in the financial sector, especially NBFCs, MFIs, when we talk about technology, we talk about what is the scope for enabling business to run with good processes, which can be digitally done, where IT enablement was the term used long time back. And much before that, we used to call it computerization and automation, the earliest stage. So we have come through the choice of all the terms. So today there are two parts to that. One is digitization of business itself. there is a level of understanding that the board should have in order to choose wisely and then make it run well. Understanding fully the risk, the payoffs, and then what happens in future if you do A, B, or C. The second part is the digitization of the board processes. To some extent, COVID hastened adoption of some of these. So, in addition to anything else that you want to talk on the subject of governance, if you could focus on these two aspects of digitization, how well formed they are, and how to equip the boards with more information on taking wise, decisions on digitization. Yeah, go ahead.
And thanks. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, very well.
Okay. So thanks for this opportunity. And I think before I share more about technology and technology related inputs for better governance, I think Sadaf also spoke about, and Chaturvedi also spoke about that. See, like what is that we are looking in terms of as an output from the governance? I think 2 or 3 key and the core things. One is that governance should be all about that where companies headed in terms of strategy and leadership. So this is very important. So it could be a short term to a very long term, which could be say 2030 or 2050 from now. And second is all about that results, like whatever financial results are there, because eventually we are converting most of the results into some numbers, and numbers are fairly tangible. So it's easy to basically monitor and manage that. And third is all about, say, ensuring compliances with regulations. So this is like, to me, these are the 3 core things which happen as part of the governance. And then we also understand that there are 2 constituencies that we are catering to. One is the core constituency, that is basically our customers, our employees, our shareholders, and the lenders. And then we are seeing that they are adjacent or very important other constituencies which are coming, we are seeing as a stakeholders, which could be, say, society, environment, and like a lot of players are taking do no harm approach instead of doing better approach. I think I read even your article very recently where you have articulated some of these things. What I see actually, if I just put all this together, like where are the challenges? So 2 fundamental challenges. It may apply for some, may not apply for others, because I'm just looking at more from the ecosystem perspective. First is that if you look at the performance on the governance front or the performance of the board, unfortunately, it has not been stellar. And there has been a wide variation. And a lot of these problems are coming from the fact that perhaps board is either inadequate, inexperienced, or sometimes they do not have the access to the information which can help them taking the decision, where a lot of technological inputs can come in. So that is one core problem actually that we see. And second is that I think there is a lot of expectation from the board or the governance. So it's not only that they were already burdened. Actually, they were already burdened with so many things. Now we are layering another layer of, say, stakeholders. We are layering environment, social, and all those things. So this is becoming really overbearing for the board to really function it well. But I think a lot of these challenges, of course, one is that what should be the way forward? Let me not go there. Let me just come back to the core question, that what is that we can do to solve some of the core problems. We all talk about, say, digital transformation, but sir, actually, Srinivasan sir, you mentioned about that from computerization to digitization. I think most of the things, unfortunately, in the smaller enterprises level, they are all about that whatever you are doing in physical world, how do you digitize that? It's not about the transformation per se. It's all about that, okay, you're capturing the data on a piece of paper. Can I capture on a screen? But that alone is not digital transformation, because it will have the same inadequacy of data or the analysis or the rigor which was there even in the physical world. So what actually organizations need to think that what is that they want to do, even when the data is available in some in a form which can be read by machines or which can be interpreted by a machine. So in fact, frankly speaking, the world has really moved actually on the digital front. So it's no more about smaller things. It is no more about even Web 2.0 or 3.0. We are definitely, we are talking about how do you use the data to your advantage using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there is a classic example that I think all of us must have seen, this Chat GPT, which is a large language model, which is helping you to arrive at the decision faster. I am not saying that it is replacing the human being or it will have a potential to replace human being, but we have to think about even autonomous process in a slightly different manner. It cannot be a simple task, it can be a complex task, but if you can break this down, then only you can digitize, then you can hand it over to machine and machines can do it. That's the first part of it. Second part is that if they do it, then from the governance perspective, those who are custodian of governance or those who are accountable for governance, they should have this information in the shape and form on the basis of which they can take the decision. So many times, like it's like what we see in the industry is that there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information which could be structured, unstructured, and then it is fed to people, those who are supposed to take decision. People are not able to take decision because if you are bombarding me with a lot of data and a lot of choices, it becomes a kind of an overload for me. So what, as a decision maker, I want some key parameters on which one can take the decision and one has the clear data available. So that is where your next part of the technology will come into the picture, wherein you have the data, you analyze the data, transform the data, and make sure that you add a kind of a trend or a kind of analysis that this is what is it leading to. This only will help solve both the problems as I highlighted earlier. First is that boards will become more productive, more performance oriented, and they will have something that they can understand and they can take action on. And secondly, we will be able to get the best out of the board, because let's understand that people have limited time period. So if everything is fed to them in a raw form, it's very difficult for them to really do justice. And we are seeing that we are adding more and more to on their table by way of regulation, by way of expectation, and good times and bad time. And I think both of you spoke about. So I think we need to really work on that and move the needle forward. Otherwise, it will become more and more difficult. And I'm afraid that today we are saying that there is a wide performance, a wide gap between the performance of the boards in terms of governance. Tomorrow, this will become so fast, so sharp, so stark that you'll find many of the organizations, they'll fall apart. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Anil. That's a brilliant response. Yeah, I think what to look for when you think about digitization and then adoption of technology in a general sense, not about doing what you do on paper in an Excel sheet or what you have by way of a data collection through an app rather than, but it's much more than that. Can you actually create an ecosystem where you build the business and trying to look out for what's happening in the market, which could transform things. Even when you are on what do you call the escalator, you find that something else is moving down, which is more important. So how do you get off the escalator and move to the other? Meaning there are lots of images that come to mind the way you have put it. I'll now turn to Arun. You are heading a fairly complex institution, which is almost like a bank in terms of its, what do you call, financing profiles, right? Microfinance, consumer finance, semi-finance. Well, when you look at governance as it stands today, there is one set of things that we do are to ensure that the business runs well, that the business governance, meaning the other part is to prove to someone else that the business is being run well. I'm talking about the reporting requirements, whether it's to stock exchanges, if it's a listed company, to the regulator, to what do you call the ratio of companies, to the MCA. Is this load of reporting is legitimate for governance? Because governance is what I am trying to do, what is best for my stakeholders in my business. How much I will have to keep proving, and what is a reasonable level of reporting, as part of regulation and what seems to be an overreach? This is something that I keep wondering about. So apart from whatever else you were about to talk about, if you could cover a little bit of it towards the end, like others did. Yeah, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, sir. In fact, I will respond to your question first and then move into some of the points that I wanted to touch upon.
Okay.
The way we have seen our responsibility towards our stakeholders, to the board, legal, regulatory environment, regulators, etc. We have always seen that, and this is a reality, and we have experienced it this way, that every requirement exists for a purpose, and the trick I have found is that is to identify what that purpose is, and in general I have found that any of these requirements, obligations relating to information, relating to activities, etc., when you do follow it in letter and spirit, it adds some value to your business. This is something that I have generally experienced, because each of these things come from a particular perspective, a particular dimension, some insight that these perspectives, dimensions that we may not necessarily have always. We, like you said, we are approaching it from our own point of view on what we consider our priorities are, and we drive this vehicle according to those approach. But then when you're forced to look at something that is coming because of a requirement, and then that it does give an insight into an element that maybe you have not focused on, and that would then lead to adopting it in a manner that adds value to your organization. Generally speaking, I have followed this approach and I have found it useful. In fact, in the context of ESG as a framework, we started understanding it with a very similar sentiment. And we, about 4 years back, we tried to understand, okay, what is this? And like Mr. Sadaf said, we feel like we are always doing something that is already good in a very natural way. How much better can we make it, and what other responsibilities and liabilities should we take on? Because fundamentally the business, of course, it needs to be efficiently run, it needs to make profit, all of those things. But somewhere deep down, we think and believe, and we came into this sector to make a difference, and that's what we are doing day in, day out. We really see that in the way customers engage with us and are impacted by us, etc. And so why do we need to measure it? Or what are all these various and frameworks and that we need to commit to, etc. But as we started understanding it, similar sort of ethos, I find that it serves a few purposes. If you embrace it in its entirety, it brings about consistency in what you do across the board, right? You run a large number of organizations. There are so many touch points. Somebody in the north of India or the west of India or the south of India engaging with a customer in a particular village has to do things in a certain manner, which is uniform, consistent, etc., etc. Down to so bringing about certain standards, consistency, and then the point that you raised about when things go bad, they always reflect worse for us, and somewhere ensuring this consistency with a sort of in adopting that framework helps you when things go bad, to the extent that at least you have defined the way things have to be done, and you are ensuring that they are being done in that way through and through. And so everyone knows what to expect. So I think I have found that in the way we have gone about executing and implementing these frameworks. We obviously adopted the Indian ones, which every MFI does, like the grading and the COCA and so on. And then we adopted international standards, universal standards, and then understood these frameworks, got ourselves measured, found that we were inadequate in certain aspects, worked on them, improved upon them, and got re-rated, etc., etc. So we've done that journey. And my main learning from that is that nothing should be viewed as purely burdensome. They will all add value to core business, and we need to approach it from that point of view, including things associated with environment and our rules and commitments that we make to it in terms of starting to even, as a first step, just measuring various things that you need to measure according to these standards, and then to see where you stand and improve upon them, etc. All of it viewing from the perspective that, somewhere or the other, it will add value to what you are doing, even in the core of it, and generally speaking, I've approached it in this fashion, and we've tried to create that. So we don't have a separate department that does this. For instance, we weave it into our regular process design team that does all of these changes. And we explain them in the same manner as we explain any other process change. If you were changing an interest rate or changing loan tenor or any of these things, the way we communicate it in the same fashion, etc. And I have found that so far this journey has been rewarding from that point of view. Yeah, and then right all the way leading it up to the board, and having people in the board, committing time to even look at all of these things to start with, and then to start asking questions about it and having more engaged discussions around it, and etc. So I've generally found the process rewarding, and so it keeps us motivated to keep going down that path. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Arun. That's a very well-rounded, comprehensive medical answer, and also your own approach to how you deal with governance involving different sets of stakeholders. It's so good to hear. I'll now get back to Mr. Chaudhary, Mr. Chaturvedi. These are very short 1 minute answers now. We get to that. You see, we heard about the development that are taking place. You yourself talked about the external environment changing, being sensitive to that, and other talked about the technological changes and aspirational changes that take place in sets of stakeholders. How do we keep the directors current about what's happening? Meaning, in other words, how do we take directors to the classroom when mostly they feel they already know everything? So how do you approach this? Because you are in this business, Mr. Chaturvedi.
No, you have to, it is necessary that you tell the other person that there are new things which you are not having access to, or you are not accustomed to dealing with. But then how advantageous those could be. And you list them out, communicate to them properly. Now, in our master class, every time we take up new things and new challenges and new courses. For example, we are doing on ESG, we are doing a very detailed master class. Then we are doing on new technologies, emerging technologies. We are also saying the artificial intelligence in general, but also artificial intelligence for a particular sector of industry, pharmaceutical, cement, steel, and all, as to how it can be, how it's proving useful. But then what are the kind of questions that the director should know? Our new handbook is coming out on new technologies, where at the end we have the checklist for the directors as to what they are supposed to know and what they must be asking to understand these things. And it's also suggested that when the company picks up the independent director, they must try to see that those independent directors have the background which is not available within the executive directors. So that brings in not only just diversity, and we should stop looking at independent directors as inspectors. You see, many people say, oh, they are supposed to keep a check on the directors. No, they're not supposed to. They should work as a part of the team. They should bring in new knowledge and see how they add to the productivity and to the value creation for the company and the overall sustainability of the company.
Yeah.
And then we have to also take into consideration the external factors like the Ukraine war. And there must be someone who must study, and the director should be fully aware as to how you can do and what you can do. See, the whole economics worldwide has changed, just the way the supply chains have really moved from one place to another. So these are the kind of things we create from outside, but also make sure that the independent directors bring in the training. Thank you.
Thank you for giving focus on the why of their continuing learning and the how of it. I'll now turn to Arun. I know I'm skipping sequence. I want to mix up things a bit. Again, a very quick, short answer. How do you choose somebody for your board? Because they are having a very high profile, famous people, or they have very good knowledge about the actual business that you run, domain, what we call technical domain expertise. Or is it that they are wise people who have a lot of common sense, run different things out? Or how do you actually choose the space in governance? Who should come there?
Um, so specifically, the approach we've taken here is uh, on the one hand, we've tried to get in somebody with a skill set that we may not have, some perspective that we may not have, amongst me and my partners, founders, and some people in our senior team, because we find that that can really add value. Someone coming from a domain or technical area that is not there in the company is one factor. The second factor is that we have tried to bring in people who are not on a large number of boards, a smaller number of boards. Again, I think just from the point of view that bandwidth is key, and we need them to be available and spend a good valuable time. I think these are two key sort of areas.
Yeah.
I mean, at our size and scale, we've sort of tried to work with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Saraf, I now turn to you. You see, earlier I asked you a question about how do you prioritize when there are conflicting demands. You didn't get 99% into that answer. You went somewhere off 50. So I put the question to you again. When there are conflicting demands, especially from the investors and the customers, how does governance resolve this? Because they both have what you call some kind of a representation. The former set have a set of directors. The later set maybe are represented through independent directors. How do you resolve conflicting expectations arising from a decision situation?
Yeah, so we have a pretty robust framework. So in terms of the desire of investors or the desire of our board are kind of designed in a manner that all of the considerations are taken into consideration. And I think the commitment to governance from our organization, and for that matter, any organization, should be such that it's never an either or situation. It's, I think, a straight road that you need to follow. That's where I think it is important. The current scenario is slightly kind of challenging because there is no strict framework that is there for ESG, or for that matter, something kind of a rating. So a lot of it involves subjectivity and your good senses and your commitment to the cause. So as long as I think you are committed to the cause, as being a microfinance institution, we were committed to upliftment of women folks and poor. Similarly, we have to be committed to the good governance practices, fairness, transparency. So that is very, very important. I think there are 2-3 aspects for a large corporate, and I think Arun partly touched on that. One is like, you have to be transparent, you have to be responsible towards your customer, and you have to be responsible towards your employee and the environment that you're operating in. And third, which is very important in a sense, that how you deal with conflicting, and the question that you ask is, in our cases, certain things which are related party transactions and something like that. So there, I think what you have to say is that you have to have a very clear thought process. Is it good for the business? Is it good for my customer? If that is the answer, that you are able to kind of give it correctly, and it's not harming your customer environment or ecosystem, that is where I think you should go. It may benefit the shareholders in the immediate terms slightly lesser, but in the long run, I think all of us are tied to the same goal. I think that is where the overall framework matters. And once you decide that framework, this is important. And to Arun's point, I think getting a board member, I think that is also very key, though RBI has given a very clear guideline on fit and proper, but also people with the relevant experience, relevant knowledge are very important, because I think board is not only an activity which you meet quarterly and decide on certain things, but it is like a visionary kind of a exercise which keeps you on right direction and checks various things that which we have agreed, are we going in the right direction or not. So I think that is very important.
Yeah.
And deviate from there is the commitment that an organization can carry.
Thank you, Sarab. So don't be provoked by short-term outcomes. Look at the long-term commitment of what you are. Ensure that whatever you do, it doesn't harm any of the stakeholders. So we can convince people to come to more rational, more helpful. Anil, I just
Mr.
wanted
Srinivasan,
to get.
I have to go for an important meeting. I have
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can I leave? Okay.
Thank you so much,
To all the
Mr.
panelists.
Chaturvedi. Yeah, we'll catch up later.
Wonderful
Nice to
meeting.
meet you. Yes,
Thank
yes. Yeah. Anil, my question to you is this. It takes off from what Sadap was concluding. Are we given fit and proper, or who could be on the board? What kind of people? He talks about people who don't have a blemish in their record, who are regulatory compliant with several things and all that. To some extent, they look at the length of service, what they've been. When you look at certain committees, RBI said specifically for an audit committee, require somebody with a good, solid accounting background, a chartered accountant. But some of the other committees, like say NRC, more or say something like say IT security committee or IT steering committees and all that, they do not have any. Do you think it is time that these are at least evolved by the industry, so that we ensure we have people there who understand what they finally decide? And the point that Mr. Chaturvedi made about taking directors to the classroom, you think there are any other ways we can keep the directors actively learning? Short answers. Yes.
So actually, one first part of it, like I think probably regulator can also specify the way it is asking that you should have specific qualification when you are part of the audit committee. It comes from your qualification and experience. So same thing can apply to others, but I think I will still give a benefit of doubt to the regulator here. Reason is very simple. They are saying that we are giving you a overall or overarching guidelines. You should basically learn from it and you should implement it. And it's for the organization eventually to take the call. So that's the first part of it. In fact, the second thing that I want to say is that I was just thinking that if I were to leave a thought here, that what is that we should do to improve the governance. So I just went back to my old classroom, 2009-10 in Bangalore, and I realized that we learned about balance scorecard. So somewhere I think we should be talking about it. We should be implementing that as part of overall governance. Because, sir, you specifically ask about learning of the board of directors and also. So if you look at the balance scorecard, it serves 4 functions. First is that learning and the growth, whosoever it is meant for. Second is all about the business processes. Third is all your customers and the other stakeholders, because this is evolving over a period of time. And fourth is all about your financial part of it. So one can have a kind of a balanced scorecard even at the board level, so that they can bring in transparency and better governance. At the same time, they can take care of stakeholders' investments. It could be a direct investment or it could be indirect investments. I want to leave this thought. It's a long process. It's not that one can really implement it very quickly. One has to first understand, imbibe, and then only we think of moving on to that journey. Thanks,
Anil. Thanks, and it has been a brilliant, set of observations from all the panelists. Now I see Surendra Srivastavaji wants to get in a couple of comments, and there are no other questions. Surendra ji, your 2 minutes start now.
Yeah. So this subject is very dear to me, sir. And when we were in SIDBI under PSIG program, we brought this study on the governance of MFIs somewhere 2011-12. And based on the studies, we got few programs conducted by Institute of Directors at Gurgaon. But the idea of governance that those days was very basic. Today we are discussing ESG framework, digital processes, and etc. One of the simplest definition on corporate governance which I've come across during my career is by Mr. Narayan Murthy of Infosys, that taking care of interest of all the stakeholders. So if we can just list who are the stakeholders of the MFIs and what are the obligations of MFI toward those stakeholders, and as Anil said, give a rating on those obligations and arrive at some kind of a scorecard, that would, I think, serve the purpose to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Surendra. I think now I will try and conclude this with a few concluding comments. Bilmohan sir, before I start that, would you have any observations to make? Because you have been the tallest leader, you have seen all institutions, apex level, mid level, small level, trust societies, everything. Before I start off my summing up.
No, I think there was so much of knowledge shared by all the speakers. And I mean, I am too old to add to that knowledge. But one thing where I know care has to be taken in selecting the investors, selecting the stakeholders, because I was very careful. Wherever I worked, before inviting an investor, I will tell these are my weaknesses. So if you do that, then compatibility is something which is never at stake. Normally, what we do is there are different types of investors. They have different expectations. So to me, it looks that selection of investors, keeping in view your long-term objective of the institution, is most important. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. Actually, that's where I was hoping to start my summary. You have already put that in. Because in governance, the board, the directors, they board a running train. The train has already started. At the beginning, before the train leaves the station, it is the promoter who looks at who is going to drive and what is the destination, what is the route. So the kind of people we bring onto our cap table to a large extent defines how the governance will be run. Yeah, regardless of how it is done, yeah, there is a way of managing things. You invest in, as I said, good people, good process, and then give them good things to design. But then the issues relating to whether there will be conflicts in the different constituencies that we govern is determined by who are the people who have the most significant stake in terms of financial investments in equity. So I think Bridmon sir has already brought that issue out. Then my own thing is, but for people who are chairing the boards and also for CEOs and also for the director, there are times when we are hit by the fact that some people keep asking for too much information, too many questions. It what do you call, impedes the smooth board process. I guess we need to have the patience to listen to the question and get the answers in. Because no question is silly when you ask someone to come and be part of your governance table. And no information can be ignored. Actually, proactive, organizations, they facilitate the governance by putting all information out, sometimes more than required, but then making the directors assimilate all the information and then come back with more informed decisions. And especially things relating to, like Sadaf was saying, RTP. If there are more than 2 or 3 questions, sometimes there are, the antenna goes up somewhere. It should not be, because the overall, the idea is to protect the institution from any, slur that might come later, that things were done in a manner to favor one set of people over the other. Because what RTP requires is disclosure of interest in a transparent manner, and ensure that any transaction that take place, they are done at a very clear arm's length. Now, these are fairly things easily achieved. The fact that somebody is asking relevant questions to establish this is actually a protection to the company, rather than a kind of an attack on the company. And the choice of directors, some of you already said that. Yeah, we require people who are wise, but we also require people with very critical domain knowledge. And the way we distribute this expertise, maybe somebody knows law, somebody knows technology, maybe somebody knows accounting, somebody knows business. And then sometimes the temptation of surrounding ourselves with people who will say yes and tick the boxes, that should be overcome if you actually want the business to run for the long term. The short term, you can gain acceptance everywhere. Everybody had said yes. But the long term businesses are run by people who ask the tough questions and then engage with the entire company to find good answers to those questions. Because the long term is not about easy victories, it is about victories over challenges. So the constitution of the board, the patience with the board processes, these are very critical elements there. Also, in terms of keeping the board up to date, I do know from having been in several boards over the last so many years that there are people who think that they should not be asked to learn something new. They already know. But there are also people who are quite willing to know what happened. So in some of these places, we had a painless process. We used to have experts come and talk to the boards as part of the board process. So every alternate meeting or once in 3 meetings, we get somebody who has domain knowledge on a current matter of importance. Bring that person, come and talk about what's happening in the sector. Directors engage in a few, what do you call, interactions with the person, ask a few questions. Instead of saying, okay, we are going to arrange a training program for you, people say, no, I don't have time for that. And actually, do you actually require that? So you can't take them to the classroom. You bring the master to them and don't feel them. It's more a consultation. I mean, there are some painless ways in which we do. But still, I would say, on understanding of technology, all boards have a challenge unless they have a real, what do you call, person with the technical expertise in the mind. Otherwise, choices of what technology to use, who will be a good vendor. I have also seen places where for 3 years after, what do you call, implementation is ongoing and already it has been revised 6 times. And neither the vendor is asked to go, nor the technology gets implemented. You have issues like this, meaning your business doesn't improve, it doesn't have better processes. At the same time, your costs do not go down. And there is a team which is only trying to service the vendor forever, meaning had we had some good expertise at decision-making levels, probably we would have avoided some of these who have seen these disasters elsewhere. So my own point is, when we make the board, the incremental requirement that happen, can we also get suitable expertise into the board at that level so that the decision making becomes much better? And these are some of the stray thoughts. Governance is such a vast subject. There are existential issues of a day-to-day nature when we meet in the board. There are also long-term issues. So how long, like Mr. Chaturvedi started with, is also an aspect of what we do. And one of the, I think, biggest issues have been whether the boards know where their, what do you call, domain stops and where the domain of management starts. How do we draw the boundary between governance and management? And refuse to look into operational aspects, even though some of the directors might be having current experience, but then leave operations to the management, leave implementation execution to the management. Stick to policy, stick to higher level strategy alone. The lower level strategy still belongs to the management. How to steer clear of potential areas where we might come into what do you call unwanted, what do you call, differences of opinion. I think these are some of the aspects that one has to take care. I know there are a lot of you who have been facing this, who have faced this, who have solved this. It is not that we are bringing some new information. We are just trying to put together what we have seen in different places. And I would stop here. I thank the rest of the panelists for cooperating that within such a short time, putting together a wealth of information from their own experience and how they are managing their own businesses. So it is now back to you, Shamshri and Gigi. So I would take leave right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And it was a really engaging 1.5 hours we had. It was very enriching, and the kind of points the different panelists have put in has been quite enriching and quite useful. In fact, the point which you said, how one should know the boundary where the governance stops and the management starts, I think that is something which is very important. I feel the knowledge for the technology or the use of technology, that is going to be one of the important things when you decide about the governance improvement is concerned. And also taking care of all the stakeholders, including your indirect stakeholders. That's something very important when you are in a board of directors and taking decision for a company. So I'm sure the points which have been put forth by all the members here, all the panelists, and finally rounding up by Mr. Srinivasan had been really useful to all of us. And I can see that most of the people, around 60 plus people, have joined our conference today, to the webinar today, and I think most of them are still there. That means shows that how important and how they were engrossed in the kind of discussions it was happening here. So thank you so much to all of you, and I will hand over to now Somesh for a vote of thanks to all.
So I'd like to thank everybody for participating so actively in this discussion. Governance has been a subject very close to Sa-Dhan's heart. And we're very grateful to Bhagyashree also to have developed this governance manual. And we said that it should not be just left as manual, but we need to actually regularly engage with all stakeholders in the sector and take some salient points from this and keep sharing it, taking the learnings from all of the experts, such as yourselves, and building upon that. So that's really one of the core work of Sa-Dhan that we want to do in the future. So once again, like to thank all the panelists here and IOD as well for sharing such valuable inputs with us. So thank you, Mr. Sadav and Anilji, Rajmohanji, and Mr. Srinivasan and Arunji for being here on a fairly short notice, and look forward to you participating in the next time as well. So on behalf of Sa-Dhan, thank you everybody. In case anybody else has any questions or which have not been answered or would like to, you please feel free to write to us, and we will come back with some of the answers from the panelists itself. So in the interest of time, I think we will be closing this now.
And let me also tell this is not the last one of it. We'll be having more of such discussions in the future, both through the webinar mode or also as a physical meet. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.